Welcome, friends. The storm outside is fierce tonight, the thunder cracking like a warning. But here, within these words, I have a story, a gift for you, a gift that will guide you through the dark, calm your mind, and help you drift off to sleep. Despite the storm's roar, just remember, the rain might be scary, but you're safe here. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell, so you never miss the next tale. Now close your eyes and let's begin. I've been working as an ER doctor for over 15 years now, so you could say I've seen it all. Countless accidents, illnesses, and more trauma than I care to remember. But there are some cases, some faces, that stick with you. And then there's the case of him. I first saw him about 6 months ago. It was a night like any other. Long shift, barely enough sleep, the usual chaos. But then I noticed him. He was sitting in the waiting room, looking oddly calm for someone who had been in pain. Pale, disheveled, almost lifeless, really. But there was something unsettling about the way he sat there, like he was waiting for something or someone. His name, as I later found out, was Jacob Foster. I didn't think much of it at first. There are always people like him in the ER, people with mysterious symptoms that don't quite add up. We get them in all the time, especially when people have been living in pain for too long and just want answers. But Jacob's case was different. He wasn't in pain, he was calm, too calm. The moment he spoke to me, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "I've been treated here before," he said, his voice quiet but firm. I looked at him, confused. "Sorry, what?" He repeated it, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I've been here before. You've treated me before. For a life-threatening condition." I glanced at his chart. His records didn't match what he was saying. There was nothing in our system that showed he'd ever been admitted before. No surgeries, no treatments. I was about to tell him that we had no record of his prior visits when he continued. "I was treated for sepsis. I was almost dead." I froze. Sepsis, that was a serious condition, a life-threatening one. If that was true, I would have remembered him. We would have done everything to keep him alive. But the more I asked about his condition, the more confused I became. Jacob didn't seem to have any clear symptoms of sepsis, or anything else really. His vitals were stable, no fever, no sign of infection. He seemed almost too calm. He insisted that he had been treated for it before, and not just here. He said he'd been treated for it several times. I ran some tests, more out of routine than anything, but everything came back normal. Blood work, chest X-rays, the works. Nothing that pointed to a major issue. I told him I'd keep him under observation for a while, just to be sure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. He was certain, too certain. He looked at me like he knew me, like we'd shared a history. But I'd never seen him before. As I moved on to other patients, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The rest of my shift passed without incident, and by the time it ended, Jacob was gone. No records of discharge, no sign of him leaving the hospital, but he had disappeared from the ER. I thought maybe it was just a strange encounter, but when I came back for my next shift, he was there again, sitting in the waiting room, calm, staring at the clock. "You treated me again," he said, as soon as he saw me. "I was in for the same thing. The infection, remember? You saved me." I was floored. I didn't know what to say. There was no way he could have been admitted for anything before. There was no record, nothing in the system. But he remembered, and he was sure of it. I asked the nurses if anyone else had seen him, treated him in the past. They all shook their heads. I checked again. Nothing in the records. There was no trace of Jacob Foster ever having been in the hospital, but he was back. Again, and each time he returned, the story was the same. I've been treated here before. Each time I asked the same questions. Each time he gave the same answer. But the more I delved into it, the more disturbing things became. No one remembered him, but his insistence, that calm, eerie certainty made me wonder, was he telling the truth, or was something else going on? Was this some kind of glitch in the system, a trick of the mind, or was there something far darker at play? I wasn't sure what to make of Jacob Foster's repeated visits. For weeks he came in. Same calm demeanor, same strange insistence that he had been treated for sepsis, and each time there was nothing. No sign of infection, no medical history in our system, just a blank slate. A patient who had no past, no medical record. But then, one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was a Tuesday night, and the ER was relatively quiet for once. The usual chaos, patients with minor injuries, the occasional overdose, the family members who never left their loved one's side. But this night felt different. There was a tension in the air, a stillness, and of course, Jacob was back. As usual, he was sitting in the waiting room when I arrived for my shift. He stood up as soon as he saw me, giving me that same eerie smile. "Dr. Walker," he said, as if we were old friends. "It's good to see you again. You saved my life again, didn't you?" I nodded, but my mind was racing. I had to know more. This couldn't go on. I couldn't keep ignoring the fact that something was wrong. Something about Jacob didn't add up. "I want to check your charts again," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't respond. He just stood there, waiting. I pulled up his records on the computer, as usual, but this time I noticed something new. It wasn't much, but it was there. A small notation, a name I didn't recognize, Dr. Samuel Green. I stared at it. Dr. Shea. Samuel Green was the attending physician for a patient who had been treated for sepsis in the ER. Years ago, a man who had died shortly after being discharged. And there was something even stranger. The record listed his death as a discharge, not an official death notice, just a discharge. I clicked on the patient's file. The name was strangely familiar. "What is this?" I muttered to myself. I clicked the file again, opening the page where Dr. Green's notes were stored. And there, at the very bottom, was a note written in his handwriting. I read it aloud under my breath. "Patient is stable but will need continued care for infection. Recommendation: recheck in 72 hours, but don't expect survival past discharge. Prognosis poor." The entry ended abruptly, followed by a timestamp that showed the note had been written 3 years ago. My hands shook slightly as I scrolled through the rest of the record. There was nothing more, no follow-up, no details of what happened after the patient was discharged. But that patient's name, it was Jacob Foster. I blinked, staring at the screen, trying to wrap my mind around what I was seeing. The record was incomplete. It didn't make sense. There was no record of a death, no confirmation of anything related to sepsis. And yet, this was the same patient, the same name. How was it possible? I stood up quickly, my pulse rising. I had to speak to him. I turned to Jacob, who was still standing by the entrance, waiting patiently. His calm demeanor hadn't changed. It was as if he knew exactly what I was thinking. "You know, don't you?" I asked before I could stop myself. His lips curled into a faint smile. "I know what you're trying to figure out, Dr. Walker. I've been trying to tell you, but you won't listen." I couldn't help but feel a chill creep down my spine. His voice was calm, too calm. I felt like I was speaking to someone who had known me far longer than I cared to admit. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. "You were treated here, and then what? You died. But your records—" "That's where it gets tricky," he interrupted, stepping closer to me, his eyes now gleaming with something I couldn't quite place, something knowing. "I've never left, Dr. Walker. I've been here all along in this hospital. You just keep forgetting." I took a step back, my mind racing to process what he was saying. What did he mean by he had never left? "You've been dead, haven't you?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Jacob smiled again, but this time it wasn't comforting. It was as though he knew something terrible that I didn't. "Yes, Dr. Walker," he said softly, his voice low and haunting. "I've been dead, and so have you." My head spun. What was he talking about? Was this some kind of joke? Was he playing with me? Or was it something deeper? Something more twisted? But before I could ask anything more, the lights in the ER flickered. Then a loud grinding noise echoed from down the hallway. The lights went out completely, and in the sudden darkness, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and drawing closer. I turned to Jacob, but he was gone, and that was when I realized he had never left. The power went out for only a few seconds, but in that brief moment, the air felt heavier, colder, like the hospital itself was holding its breath. I had no idea what was happening, but it was becoming clear whatever was going on with Jacob Foster, it wasn't normal. It wasn't something you could just chalk up to a mistake or a strange coincidence. I stood frozen in the darkened ER, listening for any sound. Footsteps, maybe, but the only sound I could hear was my own heartbeat, pounding in my ears. The lights flickered back on, casting harsh, sterile light over the room. But Jacob, he was gone. I quickly walked over to the patient area, checking every room, every hallway, but there was no sign of him. He had disappeared, again, as if he had never been there in the first place. "What the hell is going on?" I muttered to myself, my hands gripping the nearest wall. I was trying to make sense of it all, but the pieces weren't fitting together. Then my phone buzzed, breaking my thoughts. It was a text message from the hospital's head of administration, Dr. Harris. "Walker, we need to meet immediately. This is urgent." I stared at the message for a moment. What could be so urgent? There had been no serious cases today, and nothing that would warrant an emergency meeting. But the way the text was phrased, urgent, it made my stomach churn. Something wasn't right. Something was off, and I needed to find out what was going on. I quickly made my way to Dr. Harris's office, my mind racing. The hallways were quiet, the usual bustle of nurses and patients absent. I passed the morgue and caught a glimpse of the darkened room through the small window in the door. My skin crawled, but I kept walking. When I reached Dr. Harris's office, I knocked once before stepping inside. He was sitting at his desk, a thick stack of paperwork in front of him. He looked up when I entered, his face serious, almost grim. "Walker," he greeted me, his voice tight. "Have a seat." I sat down, without saying anything, still trying to make sense of everything that had happened with Jacob. Harris seemed to be waiting for me to speak, but I couldn't put my questions into words. Finally, he broke the silence. I don't know how to say this, but we've had some strange reports come through the system. Patients who shouldn't be here, and I think it's tied to your patient from earlier, Jacob Foster. I blinked, a chill running down my spine. What do you mean? What reports? He looked at me carefully before speaking again, his voice low. There's no official record of a Jacob Foster's ever being admitted here. His name isn't on any of the logs. The patient you treated earlier, his case doesn't exist in our system, but it's showing up in our database like it's been filed under someone else's name. I stood up quickly, the room spinning around me. That can't be right. I saw him. He was in my care. I treated him. I know, Harris said, his voice strained. But here's the thing. There's no patient matching his description, and he's not showing up anywhere. We've checked all the records from the last few years. It's like he's vanished. And the strange thing is, there's another name popping up, associated with that file. What name? I asked, my heart pounding. Dr. Samuel Green, Harris replied. You've heard of him, right? He was the attending physician on a case involving sepsis, but he disappeared under strange circumstances about 5 years ago. I froze. Dr. Samuel Green. I knew the name. Everyone did. Dr. Green was a respected physician, known for his work with infectious diseases. He had been a mentor to many of the younger doctors in the hospital, and I had heard nothing but praise about him. But then one day, he just vanished. He left without any warning, no explanation. Some said he had moved to another country. Others whispered that he was involved in something darker, but no one ever confirmed the rumors. What does Dr. Green have to do with this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Harris sighed. I don't know, but I've been looking into the records, and it looks like Jacob Foster is somehow tied to him. I'm not sure how, but it's like they're connected in a way we can't explain. I felt a sudden wave of nausea wash over me. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they didn't make any sense. Jacob's claim that he had been treated for sepsis was starting to feel like a puzzle that had been deliberately twisted, distorted. What was the connection between Green, Foster, and the records? Just then the door opened, and one of the nurses stepped in, her face pale and anxious. Walker, she said, her voice shaking. We have another patient, an emergency. It's Jacob Foster. He's back, and his condition. She paused, looking over her shoulder as if she couldn't believe what she was about to say. He's dead. My breath caught in my throat as I stood there in Harris's office, the weight of the nurse's words settling heavily in the air. Jacob Foster was dead. But how? The man had just walked into the ER not long ago, sitting there, insisting that I had treated him before, as though he had been in the hospital countless times. There was no way this could be true. He couldn't have died, not after everything. But the nurse's face was grim, and the look in her eyes told me this wasn't a joke. Where is he? I demanded. My voice edged with urgency. He's in the morgue, she replied, her voice trembling. We just brought him in. His body. It's strange, Dr. Walker. You need to see this for yourself. I didn't need to be told twice. Without another word, I turned on my heels and stormed out of the office, Harris following closely behind. The air in the hospital had turned cold, heavier with every step I took toward the morgue. I could feel my pulse racing, and a knot was forming in my stomach. When we reached the morgue, the nurse was waiting outside, her face pale as she gestured for us to enter. Inside, the room felt unnervingly sterile. The fluorescent lights above hummed, casting harsh shadows across the cold steel drawers. One of the drawers was open, and there, lying on the stainless steel slab, was Jacob Foster. I stopped in my tracks. His body didn't look right. It wasn't just that he was dead. His skin was pale, almost ghostly. His lips were tinged with a faint blue, and his eyes, those same eyes, were wide open, but empty, like they were staring straight through me, unblinking. But what really made my stomach drop was the lack of wounds. No signs of infection. No obvious cause of death. He looked untouched. He had no marks on him at all. I stepped closer, my breath catching in my throat. As I looked at him more closely, I could feel the weight of the silence in the room pressing down on me. "What the hell happened?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Harris, standing beside me, seemed equally disturbed. "We're not sure." His vitals dropped out of nowhere, and then just gone. No trauma, no infection. Like he just stopped living. I glanced at the nurse, who was nervously shifting from one foot to the other. "Has anyone checked his records again?" I asked, trying to keep my mind from spiraling. "There has to be something in there that explains this." "We've already gone through everything," she replied, her voice soft but shaky. "Nothing adds up. It's like he was erased." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The idea that someone could just disappear from the records. It wasn't possible, not in a modern hospital like this. I couldn't take my eyes off Jacob's body. It felt like the longer I stared at him, the more wrong it seemed. As though I was missing something, as though he wasn't really dead. I moved toward the desk, pulling up the records again. There was nothing new. Nothing had changed. Jacob Foster had no other medical history, no prior visits, just a name that kept popping up in my mind. "Dr. Samuel Green," I muttered under my breath. Harris shot me a puzzled glance. "What are you talking about?" I just realized something. My mind raced as I flipped through the hospital's records. There was nothing on Jacob Foster, except a small reference to Dr. Green, buried deep in a report. "There's a connection between Jacob and Dr. Green. I know it. I've seen the name before." Harris sighed, clearly frustrated. "This is getting out of hand. Dr. Green vanished 5 years ago. You can't keep chasing ghosts, Walker. There's no way Jacob is." Before he could finish his sentence, the lights above flickered again, and the temperature in the room dropped drastically. I couldn't understand why, but suddenly, everything felt wrong. The air was thick, suffocating. "Dr. Walker," I froze. It was his voice, Jacob's voice, coming from the body. I turned slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. The body was still. The eyes were wide open, staring blankly, as they had been. But then, it moved. A slow, almost imperceptible twitch of the hand, and then another. The body shifted slightly on the table. "No, no, no, this isn't real," I muttered under my breath, taking a step back. But it was too late. His eyes blinked, and then, to my horror, his mouth opened. "You can't leave this place," Jacob's voice said, distorted and hollow, like a whisper from the grave. The air in the room grew thick with a sense of foreboding. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. The body didn't just move. It was alive in some sense, moving without explanation, like some twisted puppet. Get away from him, Harris shouted, pulling me back by the arm. This is insane. But it was too late. Jacob's body jerked upward suddenly, as if propelled by invisible strings, and then he sat up. I didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking, the room spinning, his lifeless eyes locked on mine. I've been here all along, Dr. Walker, Jacob said, his voice not fully human, his words stretching, warping like something otherworldly. And I will never leave. Not until you understand. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The darkness in the room grew deeper, as if the shadows themselves were swallowing us whole. No, no, this is wrong, I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. But it wasn't wrong. It was real. And somehow this hospital was at the center of it all. The room felt like it was suffocating, as though the very walls of the morgue were closing in on me. Jacob's body was now sitting up, his blank eyes staring into mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. His lips twitched, and his voice echoed in my head, distorting my thoughts. You've seen it before, Dr. Walker. You just don't remember. I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. I was frozen, unable to speak. My body was still, but my mind was racing, trying to process what was happening. Jacob, this thing that had once been a patient, wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be alive, but somehow he was, and somehow he knew things I couldn't explain. What do you want from me? I finally found my voice, but it trembled, cracking under the weight of the question. Jacob's head tilted slightly to the side, like he was studying me, trying to gauge how much I understood, or how much I was willing to accept. You have been a part of this for longer than you realize, Jacob said, his voice eerily calm, as if he was speaking to a long-lost friend. This hospital, it holds things, people, and memories. Old, dark memories. I took a cautious step back, my heart racing. Harris, who had been standing by the door, his face pale and filled with disbelief, was now shaking his head as though trying to wake himself from a bad dream. This is impossible, Harris muttered, his voice barely audible. He's dead. I saw him dead. He can't be alive. I turned to Harris, the words sticking in my throat. I saw him die too. But he's not dead. Jacob's smile grew wider, more unsettling. He leaned forward slightly, the sound of his joints creaking, as if he had not moved in years. There's no life or death here anymore, Dr. Walker. Not for me, not for you. I swallowed hard. What do you mean? What do you want from me? To remember, Jacob whispered, his voice dropping to a near hiss. You've been here before. You've seen it all before. You just don't remember yet. His words were a dagger, twisting deeper into my mind. Remember, the images, the memories, they flashed through my mind in a chaotic blur. Faces of patients I had treated over the years, the halls of the hospital, but everything felt wrong, like the pieces of the puzzle were out of place, and the picture didn't fit anymore. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. No, I don't remember. What are you talking about? The records, the ones you keep looking at. Jacob continued, his eyes narrowing, his smile fading into something darker. The names, the people, the patients who never left this hospital, the ones that you think are dead. His voice, low and steady, reverberated in my chest. He was saying things I didn't want to hear, but something inside me couldn't stop listening. Jacob, stop. This isn't real. You can't be real. My voice trembled as I stepped away, my back pressed against the wall. Jacob laughed softly, the sound reverberating off the cold walls of the morgue. I am real, Dr. Walker. And so are you. You just don't remember the truth. A shiver ran down my spine. There was a feeling creeping over me, an overwhelming sense of dread. I needed to get out of there. But the words were already lodged in my brain, gnawing at me. Suddenly, the door to the morgue burst open, and the nurse from earlier stepped inside. She was panting, her face flushed with fear. "Dr. Walker," she gasped, her voice frantic. "You need to see this. There's something in the records. I think you're right. There's a connection between Foster and Green. You need to come now." I didn't hesitate. Without a word, I followed her down the hall, my mind still reeling from what Jacob had said. I needed answers. The pieces were finally starting to fall into place. But what I saw next shook me to my core. We arrived at the nurse's station, and she quickly opened the computer, typing furiously. A few seconds later, the screen displayed a list of names, patients who had died years ago. But as I scanned the names, one stood out: Jacob Foster. The date of death was listed as the same day he had supposedly died in the ER. But what wasn't listed was the note under his name: presumed dead. Patient never left. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart pounding. This wasn't just an error in the system, it was a cover-up. The records didn't add up. And the worst part was, the name Dr. Samuel Green was once again tied to this entry, the final note indicating his involvement in the patient's supposed death. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Why does it say never left?" The nurse turned to me, her face pale. "Dr. Walker, I don't know how this happened, but there's more. We found something strange in the morgue records." I looked at her, my stomach churning. She hesitated, then spoke. "There are records of Jacob Foster still being admitted, multiple times, but those records were erased, disappeared." My head swam with disbelief. The pieces were finally coming together, but they didn't make sense. And then the door to the morgue swung open again. But this time, it wasn't Jacob. I felt a chill crawl up my spine as I turned towards the open door. The cold air from the morgue rushed into the hallway, but it wasn't the temperature that unsettled me. It was the feeling, the presence, that had suddenly filled the space behind me. I glanced back at the nurse, but she was already backing away, her face stricken with fear. The footsteps I heard weren't mine. They weren't anyone's. I recognized. Slowly, cautiously, I turned to face the doorway, and there, standing in the darkened threshold, was him. But he wasn't the same. This time, his skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes, those cold, lifeless eyes, were now filled with something darker, something hungry. His figure seemed to pulse with a strange, unnatural energy, as if he were shifting, stretching, bending the very air around him. "You weren't supposed to know," he said, his voice low and almost mechanical, like a broken record repeating itself. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened as I took a step back, my mind reeling. "You should have stayed out of it, Dr. Walker," Jacob continued, his voice growing louder now, more forceful. "You should have forgotten. You're part of this now." The nurse let out a strangled cry and bolted down the hall, disappearing around the corner. I barely noticed her leave, too fixated on the figure in front of me. Jacob moved forward, step by deliberate step, his face now twisted in a grin that didn't belong on a human's face. His mouth stretched wider, revealing teeth that were far too sharp to be real. "I've been here longer than you realize. You've always been part of it," he hissed, his voice distorted, as though he was speaking from far away. "We all are. You're just the latest one to get too close." The words hit me like a slap. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. The walls around me felt like they were closing in, pressing against my lungs. My eyes darted to the door, but there was nowhere to run, no escape. "You're trapped here," Jacob whispered, taking another step forward. His voice was coming from all directions now, as though the walls themselves were speaking. "We all are. You were never meant to leave. What do you want from me?" I choked out, my voice cracking as I tried to steady myself. Jacob's face twisted into something unrecognizable, a grotesque mockery of the man he used to be. "I want you to remember." I didn't understand. Remember what? Remember what was happening? I turned my gaze to the table behind him, the morgue table, the body that had once been Jacob. I stared at the cold steel surface. The body on the table was gone, and then I realized what he meant. I had been looking at him, but I hadn't seen him. Not truly. He wasn't just the patient in front of me. He was the hospital. He was its walls, its rooms, its hallways, and he had always been here. Watching, waiting. Suddenly, the hospital felt alive in a way I had never experienced before. It wasn't just a building full of people. It was a thing, a creature, a place with a dark, twisted energy that had been feeding on me all along. I stumbled back against the wall trying to get away, but there was no place left to hide. The lights flickered again. The air around me seemed to warp and bend, like it was being shaped by something beyond my control. "You can't stop it, Dr. Walker," Jacob's voice echoed in my head. "It's already begun. You've opened the door, and now it's too late." In a panic, I grabbed my phone, fumbling with the screen. I dialed Harris, but the call didn't go through. I tried again, and again. Nothing. The room felt colder. The whispers were louder now, and they weren't just coming from Jacob. They were coming from the walls, from the ceiling. It was as if the entire hospital was alive, and it was speaking to me, telling me things I didn't want to know. No, no, no. I backed away further, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The air was thick, heavy, and suffocating. I turned toward the door again, but when I looked down the hallway, I saw it. More figures, more shadows, moving toward me from every direction. Faces, twisted and distorted, emerging from the walls like they were made of the very bricks and mortar that surrounded me. "You're not going anywhere," Jacob's voice said again, but it wasn't just him anymore. The entire hospital was speaking. "You're part of us now." The lights flickered once more, and I heard the unmistakable sound of the heartbeat, a slow, steady pulse. It was coming from the walls, from the building itself. The hospital was alive, and it wanted me. "Get out!" I screamed, but the words felt hollow in my own mouth. I reached for the door, but before I could open it, everything stopped. The air went still. The lights went out, and then I saw it. A figure, a man, standing in the doorway. It wasn't Jacob anymore. It was someone else, someone familiar. Dr. Samuel Green. His face was cold, expressionless. His eyes were dark, like empty voids, and I couldn't look away. He was standing there in the shadows, watching me, his eyes burning with something older, darker. "Welcome to the family," he said softly.
his voice as hollow as the building around us. "We've been waiting for you." The walls seemed to close in on me, and I realized I had never left.
The air felt thick, suffocating. My lungs burned as I tried to breathe, but it was as if the very oxygen in the room had been replaced with something heavier, something darker. The walls seemed to pulse around me, as if the hospital itself was breathing, alive, with a life force I couldn't understand. And standing in front of me, in the doorway, was Dr. Samuel Green. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My heart was hammering in my chest, every nerve screaming at me to run, to escape. But there was nowhere to go. The room, the hospital, the entire place seemed to be closing in on me, like a trap I had walked straight into. Dr. Green's expression was unreadable, cold. He stepped into the room, his movements slow and deliberate. I couldn't take my eyes off him. He wasn't just standing there. He was waiting for something. What is this? I finally managed to choke out, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved closer, his footsteps echoing in the silence, until he was standing just a few feet away. The space between us felt wrong, like there was a heaviness to it that I couldn't explain. "You've seen it now," he said softly, his voice calm, almost too calm. "You've opened your eyes, Dr. Walker. You've finally seen what's been here all along." I shook my head, my mind reeling. I was on the edge of losing control, my thoughts spiraling. "I don't understand." He smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was a smile that sent chills down my spine, one that hinted at some terrible secret that had been buried for far too long. "Of course you don't," Green said, his voice low. "You've been blinded by the system, by the job. You've always been a part of it, but you never knew. But now, you see what this place is, what we all are." "What do you mean?" I demanded, taking a shaky step back, my mind struggling to connect the dots. "What is this place? What are you?" Green's smile widened, and his eyes darkened. "This hospital isn't just a building. It's a vessel, a conduit. It's a part of something much older. We've been here for centuries, Dr. Walker. We are the hospital." I stared at him, my body frozen in place, my mind struggling to process what he was saying. That's insane. You can't be serious." "I assure you," Green said, his tone dead serious. "I am. You were brought here just like the others. You've treated the patients, listened to their stories, but you never understood. It's not about healing, it's about preservation. The people who come here, patients, doctors, staff, they're part of the hospital's cycle, and when they die, they don't leave. They stay, they become part of it." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my head spinning, my thoughts raced, but I couldn't catch up. "You're telling me this hospital is alive?" Green nodded slowly, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Alive, yes, in a way, and you're part of it now. That's why you couldn't leave. You were never supposed to. We all belong here, and when you've been here long enough, you start to understand. You see it. The patients, they never leave. Neither do the doctors, neither do the ones who think they've escaped." I felt like I was drowning. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be real. But somehow, it made sense. Everything I had seen, Jacob, the strange disappearances, the missing records. It all fit together in a way I couldn't ignore. Jacob, he's one of them? I whispered. Green's expression softened for a moment. He was never supposed to be treated the way he was. He was the first, the one who should have passed, but he didn't. And now he's part of the hospital's cycle. He remembers Dr. Walker. He remembers it all, just like you will. I stepped back again, my breath coming in short, frantic gasps. I don't want to be part of this. I didn't sign up for this. No one does, Green said, with a hollow laugh. But that's the beauty of it. The hospital chooses you, and once you're in, you can't leave. You can't escape the cycle. You become one of us. His words echoed in my mind, the weight of them sinking deeper and deeper into my consciousness. One of us. It wasn't just about the patients. It was about all of us. The doctors, the staff, the people who had worked here, who had become the hospital, in some twisted way. Suddenly, the room grew darker. The lights flickered again, and the walls seemed to close in on me. The air turned thick and suffocating, like the entire building was drawing me in. I could feel it. The hospital, the thing that had been watching me, waiting for me, was surrounding me. I turned, desperate to find a way out, but there was nowhere to go. The door was still open, but something was pulling me back. Something was dragging me back into the heart of the building. It's time to remember, Green whispered, his voice barely audible over the growing sound of my own pulse in my ears. And then I saw it. The hallway beyond the door, the walls warped and bending. The patients from before, the ones I had treated, they were standing there, their faces twisted in a way I couldn't describe. They were all there, waiting for me to join them. The building wanted me, and as the darkness crept around me, I knew there was no way out. The door slammed shut behind me, and the hospital swallowed me whole. I don't know how long it's been since I last spoke, since I last felt. But I know one thing for sure. The hospital is not just a building. It's not just a place full of patients, doctors, and staff. It's a living, breathing entity. And I'm a part of it now. I can feel it, deep in my bones, as though the walls themselves are pulsing with life. The rooms, the hallways, they're all alive. They shift, they breathe. I've been walking through these halls for what feels like an eternity, and yet I've never seen them like this before. They're darker, the air heavier, the silence is thick, suffocating. I'm not sure how I ended up here, how I ended up back in the ER, standing in front of the same walls that I once considered home. It's all a blur now, like a nightmare that keeps looping in my mind. My feet move on their own, and my hands tremble as I reach for the door. The moment my hand touches the handle, I hear a voice, his voice, echoing from the shadows. "You're still here, Dr. Walker." It's Jacob. His voice is calm, eerie, and it sends a shiver down my spine. I open the door slowly, stepping into the familiar room. The ER, my ER, is just as it always has been. The fluorescent lights hum above me, casting long shadows across the cold white walls. But something's different. Something isn't right. The patients are all here, lining the beds, the halls, but none of them are alive. Not really. They stare at me with hollow, glassy eyes, their bodies still unmoving. And yet I know, I feel that they're watching me, waiting. "You'll see them soon enough," Jacob says from behind me, his voice low and almost comforting. I turn, but Jacob isn't there. His voice is just a whisper in the room, like it's coming from the walls, from the floor beneath me. The hospital has changed me, changed all of us. I see the truth now, the endless cycle of life, death, and something else. The patients, the doctors, the staff, no one ever leaves. They just become part of the hospital, part of the system. I take a step forward, my mind still racing to make sense of everything. But the moment I move, the room shifts, the walls bend, the beds grow taller, the shadows longer. And then I see it, the door at the end of the hallway, the one I've never seen before. It's cracked open, just a sliver, and I can hear something from beyond it. A sound, soft at first, like the hum of an old machine, but it's growing louder, louder. I don't know why I walk toward it. Maybe I'm curious, maybe I'm just desperate to understand. Whatever the reason, my feet move on their own, carrying me toward the door. And as I get closer, the humming grows louder. But now I can hear something else. A whisper, a voice I recognize. "It's time to remember," it says. "Jacob." I push the door open, and what I see, it's not what I expected. Beyond the door is a room I've never seen before. It's dark, but I can feel something cold inside it. There are no patients here, no beds, just rows upon rows of old rusted equipment, machines that shouldn't be here, machines that look wrong. Some are pulsing, others are humming, their lights blinking erratically. And in the center of the room, there's a chair, a metal chair, attached to the floor, with straps hanging loosely at its sides. The seat is stained, dark, and sticky. "You've been in this chair before." Jacob's voice echoes. "You just don't remember." I feel a pull in my chest, a magnetic force that draws me toward the chair. My body moves against my will, like the hospital itself is commanding me to sit. The air around me grows cold again, thick with the weight of the building's history, its hunger. I know this place. I know this chair. It's not just for anyone. It's for those who have become part of the hospital, those who have been chosen to stay. The chair doesn't just hold you in place. It binds you, connects you to the walls, the machines, the memories that can never be forgotten. I fight it. I try to break free, but the pull is too strong. My hands tremble as I reach out, but there's no resisting it. I sit down. The moment I do, everything goes black. I can't say how long I was sitting in that chair. Time doesn't exist here. Not like it should. It's as if the minutes, the hours, the days, all of it is twisted, distorted, stretched beyond recognition. I felt my body being held, bound by invisible chains. The chair didn't just keep me still. It pulled me deeper into the hospital, deeper into its heartbeat, its pulse. It was as if I was no longer a man, no longer a doctor. I was just a part of the machinery, a cog in something far bigger than I could comprehend. The coldness of the room pressed against my skin, and I could hear the hum of the machines around me. They weren't just operating, they were alive. I could feel them like they were breathing in sync with my own breath. And then the whispers began. They started softly, like a murmur from far away, but soon they grew louder, clearer. "You've seen it before," one whispered. "You've always been one of us." Another voice joined in, the words familiar, yet distorted. "Remember, Dr. Walker. Remember who you really are." I tried to fight it, tried to scream, but no sound came. My mouth was dry, my body trembling, but it was as if the hospital was controlling me, controlling my very thoughts. The room swam around me, the whispers merging into one, and suddenly I knew exactly where I was. what this place was, what it had become. I was in the heart of it, the very core of the hospital, and it was alive. More than alive, it was feeding on the memories of those who came in, those who never left. I had been here before. I had always been here. The machine in front of me, the one with the blinking lights and the pulsing rhythm, hummed louder. The sound seemed to reverberate in my bones, growing stronger with each second, until the walls themselves felt like they were vibrating with it. And then it hit me. The hospital, the patients, the doctors, the ones who walked the halls, treated the sick, and tried to help. It was all part of a cycle that never ended. Those who came in to heal would be trapped forever, their minds taken, their memories wiped clean. They were reborn into the system, twisted and transformed, becoming a part of the hospital's heartbeat. And now, I was part of it too. No, I whispered, my voice weak, a faint trace of resistance still clinging to me. I don't belong here. I'm not one of you. But the whispers didn't stop. They only grew louder, wrapping themselves around me, seeping into my thoughts. They were here, in my head, pulling me under. You are one of us. Jacob's voice cut through the static, smooth and insistent. You've always been. The cycle is complete. You've been here before, Walker. You were one of the first. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and I felt the weight of everything crash down on me. I had seen it all. I had treated the patients. I had tried to save them, to fix them, but I had never realized that I, too, was part of the system. I remembered now. I remembered the moment I first walked into the hospital. The first time I died, the first time I became one of them. I had been brought here, just like Jacob. Just like everyone else who walked the sterile halls, who treated the sick, who healed the wounded. But there was no healing here. No real healing. This was the place where souls went to be trapped. The place where memories were erased and rewritten. I had always been a part of it. And now, I would never leave. The chair shifted beneath me, its restraints tightening, and I could feel the pull of the hospital grow stronger. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in my veins. It was in my bones. I was becoming part of the hospital's pulse. Suddenly, the machines began to beep, frantically. The lights above flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. The heartbeat of the hospital, my heartbeat, was growing faster, erratic. I could feel it everywhere, thrumming beneath my skin. It's happening, Jacob's voice said again, softer this time. You're waking up. You'll remember it all now. But I didn't want to remember. I didn't want to be a part of this place. I didn't want to be one of them. I tried to move, to break free, but the restraints held me tight. The room began to spin, the hum of the machines blending with the pounding in my head. And then there was a flash, like a vision, or a memory, something long forgotten. I saw it. I saw myself, years ago, standing in the same room, looking at the same machines, the same empty hallways. I had been the first. I was the first doctor to be brought here, to be trapped in the cycle. And now, I was the patient. The cycle had come full circle. No, 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 I screamed, my voice breaking as the panic set in. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be like them. But it was too late. The walls seemed to close in, the sound of the machines growing deafening. The lights flickered again, and I could see them. The patients, the doctors, the staff, all of us. We were part of it. We were trapped, forever. And in that moment, I understood. I was no longer Dr. Ben Walker. I was part of the hospital. I was no longer Dr. Walker, at least not in the way I had once known. The memories of who I was, of the life I had lived, were fading, slipping away like sand through my fingers. They were being replaced by something else, something darker. The hospital's pulse was now my pulse. The walls, the machines, the very air around me. They were part of me, and I was part of them. But even in the midst of this transformation, a small part of me, the last remnant of who I used to be, was still fighting, still desperately clinging to some vestige of who I was. I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to become just another piece of the hospital's twisted cycle. Yet, every time I tried to resist, the pull grew stronger. The hospital was calling me. The whispers, the voices were growing louder. They were coming from everywhere, from the walls, from the machines, from the very air around me. "You can't fight it," Jacob's voice said softly, almost sympathetically. He was standing just outside my vision, though I couldn't see him clearly. His voice seemed to come from all directions, filling the space around me. "It's already over. You're one of us now, just like the rest. You're not going anywhere." I closed my eyes, trying to block out his voice, but it was impossible. The hospital, this place, had become a part of me, and I had become a part of it. The connection was unbreakable, but then, as if the hospital itself were listening to my thoughts, something changed. The humming of the machines slowed, and the room grew colder. A feeling of dread crept over me, darker than before, deeper. It wasn't just the pulse of the hospital I was feeling now. There was something else, something worse, moving through the air. The lights above flickered, casting long shadows across the walls. For a moment, everything went dark. When the lights returned, I wasn't in the same place anymore. The room, the morgue, the ER, the hallways I knew so well, had disappeared. Instead, I was standing in a vast dark void. It felt like I was floating, but the ground beneath my feet was solid, yet unnatural. In the distance I saw it, a figure, a shape, standing still in the darkness. Its outline was blurry, but it seemed to call to me, to beckon me forward. I walked toward it, my footsteps eerily silent in the vast emptiness. As I approached, the figure came into focus. It was Dr. Samuel Green, but not the man I had once known. No, this version of him was different. He was standing tall, his eyes empty, hollow like black pits, and his body was covered in strange markings. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his mouth stretched into a twisted smile that sent a chill through me. "It's time," Green's voice echoed, deep and resonant, filling the void. "The cycle is complete, Dr. Walker. You've crossed over. There's no turning back now." I tried to speak, to move, but my body felt heavy, like I was sinking into the floor. The whispers surrounded me, louder now, filling my ears, my mind, my very soul. "No," I gasped, shaking my head. "This can't be happening. I don't want this." Green stepped forward, his movements smooth and almost unnatural. "You were always meant to be here. You've always been part of it. Just like Jacob, just like all the others. You were part of the cycle, long before you ever walked into this hospital. The moment you set foot here, you belonged to it." The darkness around me seemed to pulse, the walls of the void closing in, pressing against me. I couldn't escape. I couldn't fight it. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Please, I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to be part of this." "You never had a choice," Green replied, his voice cold and final. "None of us did. And now you will stay. Forever. Just like me. Just like Jacob." I could feel it. The final step.
I was no longer a man. I was part of this place. I had become part of the hospital, a part of its dark pulse, its eternal cycle. The last remnants of who I was slipped away, and then, in the blink of an eye, I was inside the walls, part of them. My body faded into the very foundation of the building, my consciousness entwined with the heartbeat of the hospital. I was no longer Dr. Walker. I was now one of the lost souls of this place, one of the patients who never left. The whispers faded, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was silence, a deep, empty silence that filled the space where my thoughts used to be. And in that silence, I knew the truth. The hospital never lets you go, and now I would never leave.